Hi everyone, it's Carol Keller here with a few tips for how to use your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, and the tips are also good with the Stampin' Mini Cut and Emboss machine. So the first tip is using your plates. Make sure that you flip one. I usually flip the top one to keep it level. The bottom one for me stays pretty level. Some people flip the bottom one, either way. So in other words, what I mean is you use it, and then the next time you use it, you flip it so that it doesn't get bowed. So that is tip number one. Tip number two is to not line up your plates exactly. You don't want to run them through the machine like this because it makes it a little harder. You want to stagger even just one of them a little bit, which is nice because it means that you don't have to worry about lining them up perfectly. Tip number three is to use washi tape when you want to hold something down that's you don't want to move in the machine. So for example, I want to cut out this flower and I want to make sure that the die lines up exactly. So I'm going to line it up at the little bud at the top and the stem at the bottom. And when I know I have it positioned where I would like it, I'm going to put a couple of pieces of washi tape to hold them in place. For some, it doesn't matter, and you can just lay them down and not worry too much. For example, I'm also going to run, and you can run more than one thing through at once. I like to be efficient, so I'm going to run this through, and I know I want it to be about 1 inch, and it's okay if it wiggles a little bit because I can always trim it up again later. So that one I'm not going to worry about too much with the washi tape. And then for the last one, I have a label, and I do want to make sure that that lines up right where I would like it to. So for that one, I am going to use a bit of washi tape as well. So you can see I can run more than one thing through at once. So I'm going to run them all through. Oh, and the other thing is, that's right, you don't necessarily want the square ones. You don't want that to go through all at once. Kind of makes your machine work a little harder, so tilt it even just a little bit. So for here, I'm going to just tilt it at an angle a little bit so that it doesn't run through straight. The rest don't matter as much because they don't have long edges. It's only for those with long edges. Move that one more time. Put my plate down. And here we go. And then the machine doesn't have to work very hard, and you can cut more than one thing at once, like I said. And there we go. So we have our one, and even without the washi tape, it came out very straight. And two, just be careful when you're peeling the washi tape because I have had it tear my cardstock. So you want to make sure that doesn't happen. There's number two, nice and centered. And number three, my flowers. Give that a nice gentle go there. Beautiful. And then I have one more tip for you, and that is how to extend a die to make it longer. So this die, I wanted to actually cut out a rectangle that's almost the whole shape of this piece of cardstock. So here's how to do it. I'm going to move my machine a little bit so you can see the edge a little better. And what we're going to do for this one is I'm going to line it up near the top because I do want it to be, like I said, the whole length. And I wanted to cut as much of this as possible, but not that last section. So what I'm going to do is lay it over the edge of the last plate. Because if it's not on the plate, it's not going to cut. So I am going to put a piece of washi to hold that in place. And I'm going to take my top plate and do the same thing. I'm going to make sure, I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to make sure that it doesn't hit that bottom edge. And so when I do that, I'm going to cut the top, but not the bottom. And I do realize that I just said not to put them in straight, but I do it as little as possible, let's say. And I can't even turn this a little bit, but it's more, well, I can't turn it because I want it to be straight at the bottom. So this is kind of the exception to that rule. but let me show you what we've got so far. So I've got it cut about halfway. Now here's the only tricky part, is lining it up so that I can get it to the bottom. So I want to make sure that that little scallop is in place, and I may actually use a couple of pieces of washi tape to make sure that happens. Because now you don't want it on this edge. I don't want the edge here because it will cut that in half, but I do want it to line up so that it cuts up to there. So this time we're going to turn it around this way because I do want it cut on this edge. Going to do the same thing I did before, lay the cardstock so that the bottom edge is the only thing that's not meeting the surface of the plates, so that everything else cuts, and feed it through, and cross my fingers that on film it worked like it did when I practiced. So let's see. Ha, perfect. Hopefully it's also lined up. That's the other thing. And it did. So as you can see now, I have a long sheet of paper, a long sheet of cardstock that's going to fit inside a slimline card that I'm going to do on my live video. So that is how you do it. That's how you extend a die to make it longer. You can actually make it shorter as well by doing something similar. Say you only want it this big. You set it up at the edge and cut this part, and then turn it around and then place it where you want it to cut the bottom part to make it shorter. So I can show you quickly on the scrap. So say I only wanted it as big as that cardstock. And I want an edge on the bottom. So you do still have to line it up and keep it straight. Run it through. And you can see I have the edge. All right, and if you want to make it shorter, I cut one most of the way through on this little scrap, and then we're going to turn it around. And on this one, it's actually a little easier to line up when you want to make it shorter, because you can make sure that the grooves fit right into the grooves on the die. And we're just going to, and we can lay the whole thing on there because we know it's going to line up, and the grooves are not going to cut in a new area if we lined it up correctly. And now we have a smaller one. Oh, actually, and that's right. If we had done it edge to edge, then the extra lines would not show. I did forget that little piece, but regardless, it still looks cute, and it's still a shorter one than the original. So if we need a shorter one on the project, we will have it. And there are some tips for using the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machines. I hope you like them. Bye-bye.